everything that you've done for South Carolina running um, it just speaks volumes. I'm from Florida, so coming into South Carolina and like learning just coaches and learning events, meets, and the history behind it has always been. It's been definitely an exciting past couple of years of just learning it. And obviously, like I think the first time I ever heard your name, honestly, was the meet, was Pink House Invitational, and it was like a pinnacle meet to go to. It was something like it was on calendars, and I was like, okay, and it's so iconic because the color obviously is just so it's so bright and it's out there. Um, and so it's always your name's been out there, and to finally like register two and two together, like who you are and what you've done, it's like, oh my gosh, like you're like a pioneer of this whole thing. It's awesome. Appreciate that. If you don't hear it enough, obviously the city of South Carolina owes you a ton. But to kind of begin things off, like, I'm always curious. Everybody kind of has a story and like a start of running. What is yours? Like, how did this all kind of happen?
Well, I grew up, I was actually from the time of 3.5 raised by my grandparents and grew up in a very, sheltered, I would say, kind of secluded environment. My grandfather was a minister and I was homeschooled, so I really didn't do any type of organized sports. And I started having love for running like in the backyard on the holidays when I would like race my cousins and I would beat them. So at the age of 14, I decided to try a little different path of life and move back in with my father and wanted to go to school. And so I started, it was ninth grade, and I started trying out for, different sports. And obviously, I got cut from, volleyball, basketball, most all of so track season rolled around, and I'm like, okay, well, I think I can run. And so I did. And I remember the first meet, I won the mile and I could barely breathe at the end of it. I was like, okay, great. And that was the start of my running journey. Um, Embraced
Yeah.
it, from there. And that was in Charlotte, North Carolina. And then we moved in my 10th grade year to Malden, South Carolina. And I started running at Malden High School and went on from there.
Wow. See, that's pretty cool. Didn't know that about you.
Yeah.
I always find it like interesting of how people start out. I mean, because I was talking to somebody the other day, and it's like at PE, you run like the mile, and you just all of a sudden you beat everybody, and it's like, oh, like this is easy, or it's like I'm good at this. Did it come natural? Like, was it really natural to you, or because you
I
said you
think
won?
Yeah, yes, running was always fun for me. And I had two cousins that we were within a month of each other's same age. And growing up, it was always fun to compete against each other. And they were boys, I was a girl, and I would beat them. And I didn't know anything about running at all, never ran. And just thought it was fun. I'm like, okay, well, that's one thing I can win at. So yeah.
No, there you go. I mean, hey, winning's always nice, and definitely builds the confidence that wants to continue to do it. That's what we're trying to do with my daughter right now, and because she's in sixth grade,
Okay.
like yeah, so like getting introduced to the sport, and it's like, and she's pretty good. She's not bad, and so like it's finally like something that is there for her, and she kind of likes it. Obviously, finishing high makes everybody happy.
Hmm.
Um, so you start running, get into high school, or obviously high school days now. Um, was it ever a thought about running in college, or was that like kind of last minute, or?
Yeah, it started, I mean, I would say in 10th grade as I, got involved in cross country. I finished out that track season and it was a junior high setting there in North Carolina. And then when I moved to South Carolina, it was a very, competitive team. They'd won a lot of state championships and I came in, I think I was maybe number three when I got there. And it was great. I learned about, I didn't know anything about all of it. So, probably around that year, I started thinking about college. I was in the first of my family to go to college. Like I said, I was raised very, secluded, and public education really was not a priority within my family setting. So yeah, I was like, okay, I got to find a way to go to college. I don't have the money for this, so I think running could be a route. And probably around the end of 10th grade, I started really focusing on, okay, yeah, let's perfect this. Let's try to like take it all the way.
And so, you mentioned, obviously like a secluded family, and I feel like cross country is such like family oriented in a way. Like the teams are so close knit. Was that easy for you to kind of like join the girls right away? And like, was it kind of like that? Was the Malden team like that to you? Like really,
I
warming?
think, well, I mean, they were used to success, so they welcomed any components that added that would continue to support their success. So that part was okay, but there was probably a good amount of jealousy, just because I came from somewhere they didn't know, and I also was pretty shy because like I said, I was homeschooled, so it was like me and my brother growing up and doing school together. So I was not I guess you would say socialized like they were. So I just stayed pretty quiet and I just ran. So um, I ended up having some, great friends that came out of it in the end. But initially, no, they weren't very nice, and no, they weren't very welcoming. They were like, "Okay, this girl's getting ready to take our spot." So I just tried to always be nice, and I let them know, "Hey, when the gun goes off, we're in this to do the best we can do, and at the end of it, we can still be friends."
Yeah, I find that so like relatable in a way because it's like I had I think it was my junior year. We had a new guy come in, Dylan Taylor, super like great friend, but he came in and he was a skateboarder. His brother was in the X Games, and so like that was kind of his family background was just skateboarding. And he came out and did cross country, and he just he blew like all of us out. His first race, he ended up being number two on the team, and it was a shockeroo, and in a way, there probably was some jealousy of like, my gosh, dude, I've been doing this since seventh grade. You came in here 1 year and now you're like a stud. Um, and so yeah, like I said, like there is that jealousy, but obviously we embraced him because he helped the team, and we ended up getting third that year as a team. So it's like you always success kind of does. I don't want to say shy away from the jealousy in a way, but it definitely helps. And so you go to USC, and that was the first USC team ever.
It
How
was
is
the first women's team.
Yeah, how is that? That's got to be even more like intimidating because like you do walk into a Malden team that is established, and here you are going to a team that's like you don't know what's going to happen. How was that kind of experience?
Well, it turned out to be really great. I had no interest, honestly, to go to USC when I was in high school, and I didn't go to a recruiting visit with them. I did. I was actually pretty actively recruited by University of Maryland, Wake Forest, and University of Florida. So I actually had signed a letter of intent with University of Florida, and their yes, their
Yes.
coach ended up losing his job that summer that had recruited me. And this is dating me, of course, but that was in the time when there was like these serial killings happening on campus at University of Florida. And it was 10 hours from home. And I was like, looking at the stats, I was probably going to end up being maybe somewhere between 5 and 7 on the team. I wasn't sure, that I was even going to be a part of their travel team for sure. So I started kind of getting cold feet, like, what am I doing? I don't even know who I'm going to be running for. And University of South Carolina had recruited me, but I had never, like, talked to them or gone. So my dad actually gave him a call when this happened, and they were like, yeah, we still have a full ride, available, and we'd really love to have her come here. So that's how I ended up at USC, because it was, an hour and a half from home, and I was like, oh, I'm going away, I'm not going to stay in the state. But it was great. The team was just amazing. We just recently had another reunion a couple of weekends ago, and we continue to see each other, talk to each other. My roommate was phenomenal. She was from Chicago. There was only two girls from South Carolina on the team. It was me and, actually, ironically, a teammate from my high school. So it was a great experience, and I'm so happy that I ended up being a Gamecock in the end.
Yeah, that is. That's crazy. That's so cool. I'm from Florida, so naturally, like, I'm a Gators fan.
Yeah.
But actually, I attend USC now, and so it's kind of weird. I have to transition to like Gamecocks now, but no, that's so cool. Like, it's such an interesting story of how that all happens. Um, so college career, go through the motions on that one, and then you start Bluffton cross country. See, like, this is the craziest story ever, because I feel like starting like, it's one thing to coach at an established program, because things are kind of built in already, and you just you can tweak things and change it to your own, but you like started it from scratch. What were kind of some of the initial goals from all that?
Well, it was interesting when we moved to Bluffton. We came from Charlotte. Actually, we had moved. But my husband and I and my kids were in Charlotte, and we came here for my husband's job. And I came kicking and screaming. I didn't want to come to Bluffton. I loved where we were. Kids were young, and I started volunteering in the school setting where my kids were at Okeechobee Elementary. And one of the teachers there had heard that I ran in college, and I was actually had taken my kids to her garden to pick corn, and she was like, "Look, Bluffton High School is getting ready to open, and Coach Adams, I know him well, and he's asked me about coaching. I cannot commit to this. Would you have any interest in coaching a team?" And I was like, "I've never even thought about it. Maybe." So that's really how that started. So it was me and one other guy that first year, Brett Weatherington, and we were terrible. We were both learning. He had never coached. He had run under Coach Adams here locally, and he had also run at the college level, but we had no coaching background. So it was a great start. The boys, all the kids on the team had really. I think we had two kids that had transferred into Bluffton High that had actually ever even run before. Other than that, no one had ever even run. So the first year was a real challenge. The boys were 18th that first year, and the girls were, I think, 13th. And then we got a couple of transfers. I got a couple of coaches. Parents actually that decided, hey, let's help in this program. And that next year, our boys went from 18th to first. It was phenomenal. And I think the state kind of like didn't even know who Bluffton High School was. They were like, what's happening here? They're not legit. This was a fluke. So it was really awesome when we came back in the third year of existence and were repeat champs. So we were like, okay, yeah, no, we're serious. I mean, we figured this out. So, but yeah, it was just a great journey. And it was nothing that I personally did. It was, you get that coach's dream team, and those kids like were so empowered with starting something, creating something, making a name for ourselves. And that same, our girls, of course, continue to improve. We didn't have quite as high a level of success at that time with them. But the boys had this bond that was just incredible. And when they became seniors, they were pretty much all the same age. They wanted to stay together, and they were, as you know, with cross country, those kids are usually kind of the smart kids, and they had lots of opportunities from the college perspective in terms of academically, but they had so enjoyed the success of creating a program that they went on. Most all of those boys that were part of that state championship group went on to USCB and started their program. So Larry Kimball and I had a lot of fun times talking about how great it was, having that same crew. And those kids come around. I mean, last year, Nick Tone's my number one guy from that era. He made our awards for Pink House. And, it's just full circle when you see that kind of love, commitment, and just a lifelong passion.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think most of us love about cross country, and that's what I mentioned earlier. It's such like a team atmosphere, and if you can have a family kind of oriented team, it lasts forever. Couple things. So there was never like a a bug to kind of coach at all, like ever running, or like was that ever in the back of your head?
No, it really wasn't. I didn't even think like that. I came out of college, I had about 7 years of, really solid running, training, and you come out of college sometimes a little burnout. And I was just ready to take a little running break. And so I did. And then, I got married the next year. And then I had kids fairly soon after that. And I just never really went back to running as far as competitively like I had done in college. I did go back to running, just, running for fun. But, and when we moved to Bluffton, no, it just, I didn't think about it like that. But turns out, sometimes you don't know exactly what it is that you want to do. And it turned out to be one of the best things I've ever done.
No, of course. And you mentioned like obviously like parents kind of volunteering now, and then obviously the kids got to buy into it as well. I think that's so like underrated of like how much like support really helps build a team. Because when you have parents involved and you have obviously kids again that buy kind of into the program itself, um, it helps create like a stable kind of base for the program, especially starting off young. So with those, obviously, I know you mentioned honestly those finishes are not even bad for a first year. But what were some of those? Did you have like initial goals, like just to start off, or was it?
I did. Well, my goal initially was just to get the kids comfortable with running. And like it was a hard sell for the boys. You know how boys sometimes can be. But they came out, and most of them had not run, and they had the potential to be good if they bought in, and that was the key. Is that first year, it was a hard sell of what they needed to do to be able to be good runners. And we had a lot of discussions, and I love to talk with Nick about that. He was one of the pivotal kids that didn't buy in at first, and then when he was like, "Why are you having us do these workouts?" And why? Like, why do we want to hurt like this? And he showed up in Vans the first day of practice, and I'm like, okay, well, first of all, we changed the shoes and those kind of things, but he got it finally. Like towards the end of that first season, he got it, and then the kids started to follow him, and then we had a couple of transfers that really had already gotten it, and it just came together. And like I said, it's not anything I did personally. It was just getting the kids to buy in, getting the families to buy in, and then them to want it for themselves. And it was just so exciting to watch them. That's what they did.
Yeah, and you talk about like just again not wanting to really coach at first. Have you noticed any like changes in your coaching style from like when you first started to now? I don't only ask that because like it seems like now just kids are just so much faster. They start younger, it seems like. Like, did you change at all, or has it kind of been like this is the way I know how to do it, and we're gonna ride this? And obviously, it's had success.
Yeah. Oh, well, we changed 100%. Changed. Of course, I stopped coaching last year. It was I retired 21 years, but yeah, every year I would say it, and I that's what I love so much about running is all the things, the differences that you see. I think part of what made me appreciate knowing that you could get the same result and do it many different ways was when I was in college. I had three different coaches in my 4 years, and they were completely different in their coaching styles. And I was, I still maintain, all conference status under these three different, really very different philosophies of coaching. And it made me realize, hey, you just have to trust and respect, the vision, as long as it's pretty reasonable. So that has been the challenge through the years of coaching is being able to connect to the group that you have and find, okay, how can I maximize the most? And it particularly can be challenging between boys and girls. They're very different. And I love that challenge of being the head coach of both programs, and you know seeing, okay, when can we do the same things, when do we need to do different things, when do we need to have different meetings, when can we be together, and just and I think that was what really led up into last year, and watching those two different groups of people accomplish a state championship, and we had to do different things to get there with each group. So yes, we change every year, always. You have to
Yeah, I
rise
think.
to what you have.
Yeah, no, true. And I was telling somebody the other day, coaches have to deal with new personalities every year. New, it's just every team is different from year to year, let alone coaching styles and just the development of runners throughout the years. It's so crazy. I want to ask now, kind of, obviously, again, like you said, you retired from coaching. What was the thought in that? Because obviously, with all the success, it seems like, oh, you could just keep like doing this year after year after year. Um, was it just time? Did you feel like it was just time to kind of take a step back?
Well, I think it was kind of two part. I love coaching, so it wasn't like it was something that was a burden ever, because it never was. But it is very time consuming. It is year round. My kids now are 28 and 30, 31, and both of my kids ran at some point or another with me, or under me. I don't think either of them had the passion quite to the level that I did, which I recognized and respected. And so, I think eventually in life you come back around to running if it's a life thing. But I think for me, my job in the school, so my coaching really led me. I ended up getting my master's when my kids were a little bit older while I was coaching, and I got it in counseling. And so I'm the lead counselor at Bluffton High School, and that is a time consuming job. So I've always felt like, I'm always splitting myself, trying to do all the things for the team, trying to do the things for the department and the school. And I just felt like it might be time to give more time into the counseling side of things and to my family, who I was constantly not available for. Now, I had a big family, the whole cross country team, but my own personal family, I just felt like it was time to give them some time back, my husband, my kids. And so that's what led me to making that decision. And I also, I, I love it, and I love all the things about running, but I didn't want to be the old coach hobbling around trying to still live in the shadows of their team. And I'm just, I'm like, hey, it's time. It's time for me to pass this off to someone else, and to enjoy the continued success that I know they'll have.
Yeah, well, but that needs to be a YouTube short and spread everywhere, because I feel like that is sometimes where, like, sometimes you see it where it's just like it. I was in the army for 10 years, and I would always tell people, like, the day that I'm starting to be like grumpy or agitated with the little things that go on is like the time I probably need to, like, somebody needs to tell me I need to probably step back. Um, and so, like, and I feel like that is so true to like most jobs out there. Um, just understanding like that. And obviously, like you said, time consuming. Oh my goodness. I mean, even running this channel and trying to cover everything is it is a lot. It is definitely a lot. So I can imagine the coaching aspect as well. Um, what are some things, I guess, even in the state, that you've noticed have kind of changed from year one, South Carolina high school cross country, to year 21? Was there ever things that like drastically changed? Obviously, like state meets kind of changed locations, things like that. But in your
Yeah,
eyes,
um, for sure. Like when I was coming through running myself in high school in South Carolina, we had our state meets at Fort Jackson, and then we they stopped doing that shortly after I got out of high school. Because of I think the levels of security getting onto the base and things like that, it became challenging to get masses of people through. But that was just a location change. As far as the changes within the state, yeah, I mean, I do think it has always been interesting to me and challenging that South Carolina is not ranked high when it comes to, many educational things, as well as, athletics, or in running. So you see a higher level of success with young people, I think, running wise, in some other states. And I've noticed that through the years I've been coaching, that it has gotten better. So that's nice. I think Foot Locker has, brought a lot more attention to the Southeast for running, especially in the distance area of things. And some of these other big meets that happen in track, in the Raleigh area, there's some Georgia meets and things like that. So it's nice to see a lot more interest and more kids enjoying that sport, because it can be a hard sell. Running's not glamorous, as we know. It's not, the hype that you see around, a football game or a basketball game or baseball. But once you get in there and you understand it and you get the passion, it's just, as you know, it's its own family.
Yeah. Oh man. Like, phew. I mean, you should have seen eye opener this year. The channel, we're hyping that thing up so crazy. And it was almost to a fault too, because I always tell coaches this all the time here. It's like, I almost felt like we did too much, and like on me, and I don't know about just even media itself, but we almost did too much where it was like, there was so much pressure on this one meet, and it's the first meet of the year. And it's like, if you do well, they're gonna say you peaked, and if you do poor, they're gonna say the summer training wasn't well enough. And I'm like, and that's how I felt like it was almost after the meet, after it's said and done, because some of the guys' times were a little bit slower than I think people thought they were gonna be. Um, and it's just, yeah, there's hype. There's so much hype everywhere, and but that's with also social media nowadays too. I'm sure like back then it wasn't obviously nearly as what it is now. We can just find the results at your fingertips and see what's going on. One thing, kind of carry on into that too. You know, again, we speak on like just South Carolina right now for a second, and just like the overall growth in times have obviously like progressed so much. Have you know like you've noticed that in like the girls side and the guys side, like, hey, to win state back in, '05 now would get you like almost last now. Like, have you noticed those kind of changes in like teams having to be a little bit more prepared, or train again, like kind of training a different way, or just expecting like, hey, we're not going to be the powerhouse every single year, like teams are gunning for us?
Yeah, definitely. I think what I always looked at was the spread, between 1 and 5 and 1 and 7, honestly, but 1 and 5 particularly. You look at the spread and you look at the times that are the top, 5 teams in the state. And that is something that we would try to train to and talk about. But, it is the points in between, as you know. Um, but I think for us at Bluffton High School, we've come up and down in classifications. So we started out in 3A, and then we went to 4A, then we came back 3A, and of course they're currently now 4A. So yeah, you see a lot of changes, but I think in running, often you see a lot of success with the smaller classifications because it depends on how they get their students. So you see these charter schools and um, teams that can kind of their population comes from a different way than just the traditional public setting. So that's always a challenge. But you know what? I always told my kids we have to rise to the challenge. You can't sit back here and find excuses and reasons. Um, hey, there's going to be years when we have more success than others, and we certainly went through our share of years when we weren't a top 5 team in the state. But if we want to be that top 5 team and ultimately get to the top, then we have to train and do the things. And last year one of our big power, I think, plays that we had was, just looking at the consistency of the team, really focusing on being intentional with everything that we did, and looking at, okay, what's needed. It's not about, I've got 2 or 3 girls or boys that are top runners in the state. It's about what can we do as a group of 7? What can we do as the JV, supporting this varsity program, and just being interchangeable, because in 100% last year at state that had to happen in the boys. We had to be interchangeable. We wouldn't even have won that meet. So I think just recognizing that and trying to rise to what is in front of you in each year, because it's different.
Yeah, it really is. Every year is so different. And you speak on like a JV being able to, step in for varsity guys, and like you said, interchangeable. I think that part is so underrated. And that's why, like, because you see teams that like they focus maybe so hard on that varsity squad, and hey, things happen, injuries happen, uh, obviously graduation and all that, and to have like a good strong JV year in and year out, and you see that with some of these teams, like the Lexingtons or like the Fort Mills, and able to just, there's another guy. I remember watching. We went to a race a couple weeks ago, and Lexington had a JV boy who ran like 1702, 1704, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like he'd be a varsity guy on some of these teams here. And um, having that like thought process to have like these teams, and develop a whole team, not just a varsity, is so important. Um, I do want to ask about like having a meet named after you, that's got to be like, how was that? Like, I mean, I'm assuming it's such an honor, but like, how was that whole process? Like, did you, like, what is that to you? You know, what does it mean to you?
I mean, I honestly can take no credit whatsoever for anything, any part of that whole setting. So we had this great course, as you know, out there at the Hubbard property. And we had been hosting, meets there. We had county had been out there, region had been there. And then last year, we all, as far as my team goes and program, had known that that was going to be probably my last year. And Coach Melton had this vision about having the Pink House Invitational, and as the years have gone through, the kids knew that we always incorporated. I loved pink, and we incorporated pink into a lot of our uniforms, and we would do the pink and green. We kind of were one of the first teams in the state that had the pink uniforms. And then, of course, immediately there were like 6 or 7 other teams that were showing up in pink, and I'm like, oh well, so much for being able to find my crew on the course. But it was a lot of fun, and so then they just started calling me Pink House. I think actually another assistant coach, Coach Adkins, started that, and it kind of stuck with the kids. So it was Woody's vision, and it happened last year. It was highly successful, and then this year, as you know, was even better. So he, it was a big honor that he did that, and yeah, it's great. As long as I'm able, I will be at the Pink House.
No, that's so cool. I was gonna ask about that. Like, what's the meaning behind like pink? Like, why pink? But
Yeah,
okay, favorite color. So, no, that's cool. That's really cool. And you do see it nowadays with teams kind of
yeah.
incorporating the pink in the uniforms. Um, last thing, kind of want to leave off with, and I think it's so important, um, because like you mentioned before, running, especially now, has really turned into like a year-round sport with cross country, and then you got some guys and gals that do indoor, and then track has now turned into completely all the way into the summer with Adidas and New Balance and Nike and everybody trying to get their hands in the pot over here. Uh, and you see like younger kids getting into the sport, which is great, but it also it's so much. There's so much going on. What advice would you kind of have for a middle schooler or even like a freshman starting up, getting on their high school team and starting this journey into especially really competitive running?
I would just say, hey, start it early, but go into it cautiously. There are programs around us here in locally as well as in the state that they might see more success than us often with, especially with their younger runners. And I was never I don't believe in high mileage for young runners. I believe in, maintaining health and, trying to get them to continue to love it, like to come into ninth and 10th and 11th grade and still love to run, still love to get up in the mornings and want to do this thing. Um, so that was my different approach, I think, than a lot of other schools that we competed against. And there were times when I had to defend that. I would say, look, it's more about the lifelong runner than it is about winning a state championship and burning these, just running these runners in the ground. So I say, yeah, start road racing, find your passion, find your love, and then ease into the mileage of it. And then, yeah, build healthily. And then want to do it at the college level. Don't get to college, and there would be, coaches that knew my program versus others, and they would intentionally recruit my runners knowing that they had more they could get out of those runners. They knew I did not max them out with running them 75 100 miles a week, the boys. And just um I say start early, ease into it, love it, continue it, and keep it for after college, keep it for myself. Even now I run a lot less than I ever did before, but I still love running. And so when I can, I do.
No, that's great. It's well said, and again, I think the state of South Carolina owes you a ton. Just everything you've brought to the state and everything you can obviously continue to do. Um, do you still go by coach or Do you want like ambassador house
No,
essentially, or
not at all.
what do
Coach is fine. I think I'll always be a coach at heart, and coaching, honestly, um, and probably even from when I was in that sheltered environment I was talking about, and I would run, and I left, and I went to school and I was running, and my grandfather would say to me, that running is not going to get you anywhere, and running got me everywhere. So I think, and I loved my grandfather. Don't get me wrong; he's deceased now, but he didn't get that side of things, and running is truly is so much more than just running. It's just a commitment, and it can apply in so many other areas of life. And as I went through the successes in coaching, I did have some colleges reach out to me, ask me about coaching at the college level. I had some bigger programs reach out to me. Do you want to, come? Would you move? Would you come coach here? And the answer was always no. I'm committed, first of all, to what I started, and I'm committed to watching a young person get a passion for something. And coaching at the college level is different. You're taking someone that already has the passion. It's just a whole different type of coaching. And I liked looking at it from a young person's perspective, watching them grow into it. And it wasn't just about the runners that went on to college. It was about the kids that come back today to me and are like, running was everything to me. I learned, I just, so much has come back to me after I left high school, even if I don't run anymore, that I learned because of, the disciplines of running. And that's, to me, is what it's all about.
Yeah, no, 100%. And then, like we've talked about, there's the teams that you're on in high, especially with high school, and the friendships you make, they last for such a long time. And obviously, I know you've probably seen that with your 21 years of coaching experience, and even just at the college level, like you said, with the reunions. It's so much bigger than even a single season. It really does last a lifetime. But coach, I appreciate you coming on. It's been a great talk, and obviously, I would love to catch up with you down the road and just see how things are going, and wish Bluffton as much success as possible. Obviously, going after another state title for the boys and gals, and we'll see how it all kind of turns out.
Yeah, sounds great. And thank you so much for covering.